When it comes to Little Red Riding Hood, you may well ask yourself, how did the wolf end up as the heavy? Wolves were once dangerous predators, and fables like this one served as a valid warning not to enter a forest where wolves were known to live. Rightly or wrong, both wolves and the wilderness have been treated as enemies of humanity ever since. But that's neither here nor there. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived on the edge of a great, dark forest. Whenever she went out walking, she wore a red riding cloak. Naturally, everyone in her village called her Little Red Riding Hood. One morning, it was decided Little Red Riding Hood would visit her grandmother, who lived deep in the woods. Her mother gave her a basket of treats to take to her grandmother. Remember, go straight to Grandma's house. Don't dawdle along the way, and don't talk to strangers. Don't worry, Mama. I'll be careful. Little Red Riding Hood set off with a skip, listening to the birds sing a happy tune, marveling at the beauty of nature, and plunging deep into the forest. Rounding a bend, she came upon a babbling brook and a field of pretty flowers. She briefly remembered her promise to her mother, but was so overwhelmed by the beauty, she decided to stop and pick a few. What could it hurt? She gathered flowers, watched the butterflies flit about, listened to the frogs croaking, and, setting her basket down on the ground, she sat down beside it. She didn't notice a dark shadow approaching out of the forest. Suddenly, looking up, the wolf had appeared above her. "What are you doing out here, little girl?" the wolf asked in his friendliest voice he could muster. At first, Little Red Riding Hood could hardly speak. She'd never seen a wolf and took the animal for someone's playful pet dog. She did feel uneasy, but ultimately, her trusting and innocent nature got the better of her. She relaxed and smiled. The wolf repeated himself. "What are you doing out here in the woods, child? All alone?" "I'm on my way to see my grandma, who lives deep in the forest," pointing in that direction. "It is well that you are a dutiful granddaughter," said the wolf. "I must go. It's been a pleasure," said the wolf as he slunk away. It was then the little girl realized she had foolishly disobeyed her mother. Gathering up her basket, she hurried back onto the path and onto her grandma's house. The wolf, meantime, took a shortcut. A little out of breath from running, the wolf arrived at Grandma's cottage. He could hear her snoring lightly as he approached. Surprise was his. Crossing the porch, he pushed open the door and slowly entered. Hearing the latch, Grandma awoke, thinking at first it was her granddaughter. "Oh, goodness me, a wolf!" Granny leapt from her bed with a scream. She cowered behind the table as the wolf closed in. In a thrice, she overturned the table and, seeing her chance, bolted out the front door. With uncanny speed belaying her advanced stage, she took off down the path and was soon out of sight. Though somewhat annoyed at himself for letting the old lady get away, the wolf turned his attention to laying a trap. for Little Red Riding Hood. A few minutes later, Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. Who is it? It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, how lovely. Come in, my dear, croaked the wolf. She could scarcely recognize her grandmother. The wolf had found the nightgown to cover his fur and a bonnet to hide his sharp teeth. In the darkened room, he hunkered down in the bed and beckoned for her to come closer. Grandmother, your voice sounds so odd. Is something the matter? She asked. I have a touch of a cold, squeaked the wolf, adding a cough and a wheeze to get the point across. Grandmother, what big ears you have, said Little Red Riding Hood as she edged closer to the bed. The better to hear you with, my dear, replied the wolf. Grandmother, what big eyes you have, said Little Red Riding Hood. The better to see you with, my dear, replied the wolf. Oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have, said Little Red Riding Hood, her voice quivering slightly. The better to eat you with, my dear, roared the wolf as he leapt out of bed and began to chase the little girl. Little Red Riding Hood ran, realizing the person in bed was not her grandmother, but instead a very hungry wolf. Help, wolf! As loud as she could, but as she backed into a corner, she realized in terror there was no escape. The wolf crept closer and closer until a woodsman had entered the cottage unnoticed. He fired several bullets at the menacing wolf. The wolf came down with a crash, and though injured, was able to leap out the window and disappear into the forest as fast as his legs could carry him. Her poor grandmother, a bit frazzled by the whole experience, but still in one piece, took the girl in her arms. Oh, Grandma, I was so scared. There, child. Fortunately, this brave woodsman was nearby. He saved us both. The woodsman smiled, confident, without much evidence, that the wolf would never bother anyone again. He tipped his hat and took his leave. And they all live happily ever after. Except for the wolf, of course. But don't feel too bad for him. He gets another shot of glory at a little thing called the Three Little Pigs.